Okay.
Okay, so that's the first, and the most important thing, a description of each of the projects.
That's a lot of work because you have like 20-some projects,
it is a lot
and
of work.
You have to know right up front.
And what I do is, for the current sock book, I had a swatch for each sock,
right,
and a written description, and a sample, either a photo or a snippet of what yarn I want to use.
And you use a wide variety of yarns.
I try to, and that's the really
everything's very commercially available as well.
That's
awesome.
That's one of the things, is that we want everybody,
right?
Of course, everybody's encouraged to try something different.
Sub it out.
Yarn, but if you see something and you love the way it looks, you want to be able to get the yarn. So, and that's actually the hardest part for me, is picking the yarns, because if it were up to me, all the socks would be green.
So green is a favorite color of yours, then.
You picked up on that. So I try really, really hard to get a nice spectrum and also a nice variety, though I do have my favorite yarns that I tend to go to. And now, most of the time, they very, very rarely change anything that I want to use. If there's something that they think will not photograph well, they'll ask
Reds
for
are hard
something.
to photograph sometimes.
Yeah, but you know what? They haven't had trouble with.
Well, the photography in this book is amazing.
Yes,
and there's red socks right on the front
about.
cover that are, I just love the front cover of
I
this
think that's
one.
something that sets her books apart, is that the photographs are just gorgeous.
And they're throughout the whole book. It's like, this is just the page that's part one, and I love that there's multitudes. And of course, when I test knit, I'm like, I knit that one. Oh, look, it's on this page too. And I found it a little bit later, and I was like my socks that I knit are like right there, and I was like, ooh, even before the patterns. Yay! And the first one especially, I think,
because even when it's Wendy's book, it's all about
me.
Well, of course it is.
But I love that picture of the little girl.
The little girl model is just darling.
So are you there on the days they take the photographs?
Strangely enough, they didn't invite me.
Probably
just
sad.
as well.
You're doing it wrong.
So I deliver the progress materials, and they get back to me and let me know if everything's okay, and then we send out the yarn and the pattern to the test knitters. And while the test knitters are knitting, I'm writing the book, because generally at this point I've already got all the patterns written up. By the time I've delivered the progress materials, most of the patterns are all written, and while I'm waiting to hear back from them, I'm finishing up the patterns. So while all you guys are knitting,
and some of us are slower than others,
I am writing the text of the book. Because the book always has a lot of technique sections.
Yes, and that's awesome. And the illustrations in the technique sections are really nice.
Now that's another interesting thing. The way we do the illustrations.
They're more towards the back in this one, I think.
Difficult.
Well, there's some in the back, but there's
some.
Yeah, there
just
you go.
an idea of what we're talking about.
It's the way we do this is I knit, and we have photos taken of my hands doing everything.
Okay.
And it's my significant other, Ian. Hi, Ian. Who takes the photos.
Really?
Cool.
Yeah.
So does he transform them into this?
Oh, no. There's an illustrator who does that.
So based on the pictures, he draws it out. Ian and I, I have to set up, every little step. So it is a really tedious, time-consuming process.
I would think so.
And I mean, we had to do it over the space of a number of weekends, because I'd get to a point and it's like, okay, I'm ready for the photo, and he would take the pictures of my hands, and of course we take several to make sure that we get one. And then it's like, okay, he goes and he gets on the computer and does some stuff while I'm working to get to the next step. So that's really time consuming. And then I go through the photos and I pick out the best ones for the steps, and we send those to the illustrator. The illustrator creates the illustrations. Now, she's a knitter, so
that would be helpful. That would be very helpful.
Very, very big help. And then at some point I see the illustrations. Usually it's at the page proof point. But before we get to that, I get my manuscript back with just a copy edit on it.
So you go through and you get an idea of how they lay it out?
Well, this is even before that. It's just like, the stack of pages, like in Courier,
Oh, okay.
And my editor has gone through. Though, actually, this last book, she did it, redlining it in Microsoft Word. And, any screw-ups I've made, like grammatical errors and stuff. And the editor for this book, Rebecca Behan, she is awesome. And she's a beginning knitter, which is great.
Converting them.
Well, it's great because stuff that doesn't make sense to her, she would query and say, I don't understand this. Or is this correct?
So it keeps you in check, making sure.
Absolutely. Okay. And she also had some really wonderful ideas of things to add and things to move around.
Because there's stuff that more advanced knitters, we just assume.
Right.
And beginner knitters are like, what? M1? What?
Yeah.
Like, huh?
So I'm doing the copy edit, and at this point, we've sent all the socks back to Pottercraft, and they have a photo stylist who looks at them all. And I'd like to be the person who goes out and shops for the outfits, and the jewelry and everything.
They do a great job with it too.
So they do the photo shoot, and for this book, they sent me all the photos they took, and they said, pick your favorites.
That's
cool. It was very cool, and also if, for example, there's a photo that there's a wrinkle in the sock or something, you say don't use that one, or if for some reason technically you don't want to show that one.
You get to make that decision.
Right. But I mean, they of course have final say on which their book layout person is the one who has the final say, but it was very cool that I got to have a say.
Yeah, that's very cool.
There's an interesting thing in here that none of us noticed. Okay.
Uh-oh.
On the introduction page, if you look closely at it, it looks like there's a dropped stitch, and what happened is, I think it must have happened when the model was putting the sock on. There's a hole in the sock.
There is.
I looked at this photo. I'm sure a number of people at Pottercraft looked at this photo.
I noticed.
When we got the page proofs, my technical editor looked at the photo, and I looked at it again, and nobody noticed it.
So who finally saw it? Who finally noticed
Somebody emailed me and pointed it out to me after the book came out.
Well, that's like Classic Elite. We found a stitch marker. They had a stitch marker in one of their booklets, just like on the shawl, and I never noticed it, but one of my people that goes Smilo, Rita, noticed it, and like they emailed them and they were like, you're the first people who noticed, but it was like the bright orange clip stitch markers just hanging off.
Funny?
So funny.
And I mean, so I immediately went. They had sent me the sample socks back, and I immediately went and got them and looked. There it is.
Wow.
I mean, I think it got snagged when she put it on.
Stuff happens.
But that's just one of those interesting little things.
That's cool.
But
I would have never noticed that because I don't.
Well, if it was her socks,
but now that you pointed out, it's so
like
obvious,
jumping out at you. But there are other photos of the with that pattern. There's the photos, and you don't really notice it. But